The goal of this diagnosis is to change parts in sequence until the non-working headlight becomes working and the working headlight becomes non-working. At that point, you'll know which part is causing the problem. This is a rough example of what this diagnosis does. In the original, the driver's side's working and the passenger side is not. When swapping bulbs, that status quo remains, and you continue to swap parts until the working side is no longer working and the non-working side is working. In this scenario, the ballast is the problem part. Be sure to disconnect your battery before doing any headlight work. The igniters have the ability to deliver potentially lethal voltage. So disconnect your battery, make the swap that you need to make, reconnect the battery, and test it out. Rinse and repeat. But seriously, check the bulbs. You can save yourself a lot of time and effort by simply swapping the working side bulb with the not working side bulb and ensuring that that's not the issue. The next thing to check is the igniter wire harness. There are a series of 3 wires that are located inside the bulb housing, and they often become brittle, frayed, or just completely broken. If you believe that this is your problem, I've left a link in the description that you can solder the new one in, or you can try to tape up your old ones so they don't come in contact with each other. If you don't believe it's your bulb and you don't believe it's the igniter wiring harness, the next thing to check is the igniters themselves. Be sure to disconnect the battery first and then swap the non-working igniter with the working igniter. It is very helpful to label which igniter came from which side in the event that you need to swap multiple parts. If you've gotten this far, then you do not believe that it is the bulb, wiring harness, or igniters themselves. Thus, you must remove the headlights to continue to do diagnosis. There are 4 8mm bolts that need to be removed before the headlight can come out. 2 are on top and are super obvious. 1 is next to the headlight bulb housing, a little further down and back, and 1 is very difficult to access, but just easier to see via picture. Additionally, when pulling out the headlight after you've gotten rid of these 4 bolts, the blinker light will need to turn counterclockwise. You will almost certainly need an extension bar for your ratchet to access this last bolt. I cannot stress enough how helpful it was to have all of the parts labeled correctly. I labeled my wires for both position and orientation, as you'll see in most of the pictures. The ballasts are located on the underside of the headlight and secured by 3 T20 screws. It's the larger of the 2 boxes that you'll see underneath the headlight. The ballast was my problem and are known to be a lot of people's problems because moisture will sit in the bottom of them and corrode the connections. And that's exactly what happened, which you'll see in a picture in a second. As the picture zooms in, you can see the corrosion on my ballast connection, which indicates that moisture has gotten in there. If you've made it this far, you do not believe that it's the bulb, igniter wiring harness, igniter, or ballast, which leaves you with the control modules. This is the smaller of the 2 boxes located on the underside of the headlight. Again, swap them and see if the problem persists or follows. If you have gotten this far, you more than likely have a larger wiring problem. Either the wires going to the headlight assembly are not operational, or the wires inside the headlight assembly themselves are not operational. The way to test this is to swap the entire headlight housing with all of its original parts with the other entire headlight housing with all of its original parts. To do this, label all of the wiring in its correct position and orientation. That way, when you swap the entire headlights, you'll know which connection goes where. What you are about to see is the driver headlight on the driver's side. These are the original connections. Notice I've labeled them 1, 2, 3, and then 4, which you can't quite see, from the inner side of the car, so from closest to the engine to the outside of the car. Again, this is the driver headlight on the driver's side. What you will see next is the driver headlight wired to the passenger side. Notice that the number 1 from the passenger side comes all the way across, 2 remains in its position but upside down, and 3 also comes all the way across. If you wired the headlight correctly and the headlight is operational, it should work and look something like this. When swapping whole headlights, you will learn one of two things. In the first scenario, the previously working headlight does not work when swapped to the other side, and the previously non-working headlight does work. In this case, you have a wiring problem going to the headlight assembly on the non-working side. In the second scenario, the previously working headlight still works when swapped to the other side, and the previously non-working headlight continues to not work. This means that you have a wiring problem in the headlight assembly of the non-working headlight.